For over 55 years, your source for agribusiness news and features from around the Southeast and across the country, focusing on one of the nation's top industries, agriculture. The Farm Monitor is produced by the Georgia Farm Bureau in association with Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College.
All right, from all of us to all of you, Happy New Year as we close out the first week of 2026. And yes, like many of you, we are still in the holiday spirit, or maybe it's just procrastination because we don't want to take down the decorations. Anywho, this week we've tweaked the format just a little bit.
Yes, instead of the latest news and features, we're going to show you some of your favorite stories from this past year. We call it the best of YouTube. For example, the story of how a routine task on the farm turned into a life-threatening emergency for Terry England. In this compelling feature, the former state representative opens up about the accident and his determined road to recovery.
Yeah, quite the testimonial. Or how about this one? A state-of-the-art meat processing facility run by high school students. See how one Georgia community is tackling a workforce crisis while at the same time feeding its own.
The Best of YouTube 2025 starts right now.
To open our look back, we start with a story that reminded us what resilience really looks like. Terry England spent nearly 2 decades shaping policy and championing agriculture, but nothing in public life prepared him for the moment a simple chore on the farm nearly took everything from him. His recovery became a testament to courage, prayer, and the power of people who show up when it matters most.
They say the soil doesn't forget the hands that tend to it. That here, in the stillness of morning and the rhythm of the fields, a person can find purpose. For Terry England, it's always been that simple. A farmer, a lawmaker, a public servant who walked the halls of the Georgia Capitol for nearly 2 decades, chairing the House Appropriations Committee, then stepping into the role of Chief of Staff.
You know, you wind up as you serve, you have things that you never had a dream when you started serving that would become important to you. Sure. And I was very fortunate that there were a lot of things that became important to me, and there were a lot of things that I was able to have a hand in helping with.
Yeah, and of course, you were a farmer before you became a politician. What does the farm mean to you personally? I'm not just talking about the work aspect of it, Terry. What does the farm really just overall mean to you?
Well, it's just a great place to live. I mean, you know, and where we're at today in northwestern Barrow County is not nearly as rural as it was 25 years ago, but still, you still know your neighbors. When you have something happen and something like my accident happened, the two first people there at the accident was my dad and my next door neighbor.
February 8th, 2025. It was supposed to be just another day, like countless mornings before it. But Terry's relentless work ethic, his deep love for the outdoors, collided with something no one saw coming. A routine task, a familiar piece of heavy machinery, and in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A freak accident, violent and unforgiving, left Terry fighting for his life with a devastating spinal cord injury that would alter his world forever.
If you cut everything else out of this interview, the one thing that I want you to make sure is in the interview, if you're on a piece of equipment that's got a seatbelt, there's a reason that seatbelt is on there. Buckle it with yourself in it because it's there for a reason. One of my favorite things was to get on my skid steer and do work, clean up, and we had pine beetles hit us. And so we had a lot of trees that we'd laid down on the ground, and some of them still were good saw logs. So I was out there, had the forks on the front of the skid steer, moving them just from one stack to another stack. And you know what happened with me? The load I raised up, the load caused the machine to tip forward a little bit. I went to let it down, and as anybody that's run a skid steer knows, they go into this little bucking routine, and it was throwing me against the steel roof of the machine. I'd bounce back, hit the seat, bounce back, hit my head on the roof again. Did it 4 or 5 different times. And when the machine finally stopped, I'm sitting there, I can't feel my hands, can't move my hands, can't move my feet, my legs. When I woke up, I realized I've got to make myself breathe because I'm not breathing. So I was able, thankfully, my core still had enough use that I could make myself breathe.
Airlifted to Northeast Georgia Medical Center, Terry's fight began even before he opened his eyes. First, there was emergency surgery, then silence, but not surrender. In time, he was transferred to Atlanta's world-renowned Shepherd Center, a place where possibility is rehabbed just as much as the patient. For 2.5 months, Terry lived that mission. He worked, he struggled, he refused to yield. And beside him, 2 therapists, Kelsey Lee and Christopher Reddy, refusing to let him fall. They weren't just rebuilding a body, they were rebuilding a belief that this wasn't how his story would end. Then came May 9th, a quiet Thursday just after 10 a.m. No headlines, no parade, but a moment that needed neither. Terry England, once told he might never walk again, stepped through the doors of the Shepherd Center to return home. No walker, no wheelchair, just 2 feet and one unshakable will.
Again, we don't know why we were there, but we know that we were there for a reason. And, is part of the reason what we're sitting here talking about today is what we experienced and the reason that in these machines that have a seatbelt, put the seatbelt on.
So right now I'm standing where it all happened. This spot right here, where a simple day's work turned into something unimaginable. A place Terry England has walked across thousands of times until the one time that nearly cost him everything. And yet, this location doesn't trigger fear or bad images. It brings clarity. Because what Terry carries now isn't just the memory of the accident, but a new perspective. One rooted in faith, lifted by family, and strengthened by the hands of neighbors, fellow farmers, and folks who know what it means to show up when it matters most.
Knowing that our Farm Bureau family that we had, made years ago, 30 plus years ago when we were on the Young Farmer Committee, knowing that the Ag Teacher Network, that the 4-H Extension Agent Network, all of those folks put out the word that night or the morning after when they heard about the accident, and all of a sudden there are people everywhere praying for you. You don't come through those kind of things and not be a changed person and not have a little bit better outlook on life, especially when you're able to walk out and you know that it's because miracles happened and because prayers worked.
And Terry, I would not be doing my job if I didn't bring up one of your biggest supporters. It's not a former constituent, it's not a fellow public figure, it's your wife, Cindy, your high school sweetheart. Could any of this been possible without her?
No, absolutely not. She was there all the time. During the whole 3+ months that we were not home, she was home one day, and that was while we were still in Gainesville. She needed to come home and get some clothes, and then she was back at Gainesville.
Day by day, he's reclaiming movement, rebuilding strength. But maybe more than anything, Terry England is rediscovering the meaning in the smallest of victories. You see, a farmer doesn't quit when the crop fails. He replants, waters, and waits. Terry England is doing the same with a spirit that refuses to yield.
And I'm happy to report that Terry's doing remarkably well. His recovery keeps climbing. and his determination remains as strong as ever.
Really inspiring. His progress has been nothing short of remarkable. Still to come on our Best of YouTube special. From hurricanes to snowstorms, find out what it takes to grow one of America's most famous onions.
Some of the top agricultural leaders, not just in the state, but the entire country, were on hand to get a firsthand look at this new student-run meat processing facility at the Hall County Agribusiness Center. It's a brand new space with top-of-the-line equipment that, needless to say, left everyone very impressed.
If we could just take this and multiply it across this country, there'd be a lot of young people that have a different appreciation for the food and how it gets to their grocery store. And you know what? When your children learn about it, they teach their parents about it. So it's really a fantastic facility, and what a way to really let people start their life knowing where their food comes from and how valuable it is to them and how difficult sometimes it is to get it there.
That's especially true with meat processing, as a lack of operations, especially in smaller communities, was the idea behind this 3-year project.
One of the things that we believe here locally is that we are in the middle of a crisis in terms of our protein supply, that it has become all multinational. And so with some support of some key leaders in the state of Georgia and the usage of some COVID funding, we have brought a fully operational commercial processing plant that students and their teacher run here in Gainesville, Georgia.
However, the impact of this program will be felt far beyond the Hall County borders, as it will provide a much-needed boost to the agricultural workforce.
Kids think they all got to go to college and get a 4-year degree, and that's wonderful. We need people to do that. But there's so many opportunities out there, well-paying opportunities, for people to go in different directions and do the work that this country has been developed on and built on.
Reporting from Gainesville, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
Jennifer Parson back with you as we continue our annual Best of YouTube special. As our look back continues, we turn to a story Kenny Burgamy brought us from the road in May. He spent the day in Cobbtown with John and Luke Schumann, getting an up-close look at how Vidalia onions go from seed to shelf, and why this family-run operation remains one of the driving forces behind Georgia's most famous crop.
John, good being with you today. Take me through the process, what the consumer may not know. These onions from the field to the supermarket or to restaurant. Take me through that process.
This onion crop here started last summer when we started buying our onion seed, and we'll buy the different varieties of onions that we're going to plant this year, and we'll sow our seed beds in September. And usually around mid-September we'll start sowing the seed beds with a tractor and a planter, and we're planting about 2.5 million plants per acre on the seed bed, and we'll grow those off until early to mid-November, and we'll start transplanting to the field our earliest varieties. We'll harvest them typically early to mid-April. We'll start harvesting, and what you see here in the field, and they're all harvested by hand. We use H2A labor crews that we license through USDA, and we'll bring them in our facility.
Take me through the weather span. I mean, you really have some challenges here in this part of the state.
You know, we have. It's been one of our toughest growing season we've had in a while. So we started with Hurricane Helene. We had just planted our seed beds, and praise the Lord that only the earliest varieties had even germinated, and they were only about that high. There was just a tint of green over the seed beds, and those got sandblasted. That 80 to 100 mile an hour winds that came through Tatnall and Toombs County picked up sand particles in the field and just sandblasted those tops. So we lost a lot of those early variety tops and lost early variety onions. And then, thankfully the main varieties in this season's crop had not even germinated. So those were fine. And then we moved through Christmas into January, and we have the snowstorm where we get, depending on where you are, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of snow. The snow actually was an insulator into some degree, because everything above the snow line got tip burned and everything below the snow line actually fared better. So we got through the snow okay, the Lord blessed us there, and then we had one afternoon, we had almost 9 inches of rain in one afternoon, and it was, that was hard to stomach too.
Well, despite the weather conditions, you got a great product. I took a bite out of it just a few minutes ago. Where do your onions go? Consumers probably don't realize the impact of the Vidalia onion across the country.
Yeah, we're tremendously blessed in Southeast Georgia to have the Vidalia onion, particularly in the state of Georgia. It's, you know, Georgia's known for a lot of things, you know, the Georgia Bulldogs and Coca-Cola, and just, there's so many things that just resonate in the Masters tournament, and just, Vidalia onions are one of them, and we're very blessed to have it here. And, you know, there's a consumer demand for this premium sweet onion around North America. So we do here at Schumann Farms, and in the Vidalia industry as well, we distribute all over the lower 48 and into Canada. So there's a wide distribution network. Retailers all over the country and in Canada really like this onion. They look forward to it each and every year. And it's really driven by the consumer demand and the appetite for this onion. They recognize the Vidalia onion as a premium sweet onion. And you know, celebrity chef Bobby Flay once said that the Vidalia onion is not only the world's most famous onion, it's quite possibly the only famous onion. So I think that just speaks to the affinity of it.
You've got your son behind you. You followed your dad going into a 3rd generation with your son, Luke. Tell us about your operation and how important it is as the family is connected to this. That's a big deal in your world.
It is, and you know, we as farmers, as we talked earlier, we're just eternal optimists and just see the good in just most everything, and even through this difficult growing season. But you just staying connected to the family and being able to work with your family each and every day. It's got its own set of challenges for sure, but it is a blessing at the end of the day, and I couldn't imagine spending my time any other way. And you know, I grew up around farming. My dad was actually in the fertilizer business. He owned Schumann Fertilizer, feed and seed distributor, and sold farmers in 2 or 3 counties all their fertilizer and chemicals and seed, and they'd all come to him with soil samples and, you know, get his recommendation on how to plant that crop. And then he also had Schumann Farms on the other side of the fence. And so we were just around it 24/7, 365. And I really saw how much he enjoyed it and how much he drew from that. And that kind of made an impact on me and really encouraged me to come back and to get into the business.
I know you're an optimist because you keep doing this year after year. What does it look like for the future? The economy's a bit up in the air right now. People are worried about some of the imports-export situation and tariffs. What does it look like for the onion industry?
You know, I think we're all paying attention to global economics and what's happening in the world economically, but you know, I try not to worry about too much of that. I try to stay focused on what we can control and what we can't, and just distinguish between those two. But I do think, you know, for the Vidalia onion, fortunately for us, a sweet onion is a preferred item in the produce department. It is a very versatile item in the produce department. You can use it in so many different dishes. You can cook with it, saute it, you can eat it fresh, you can eat it raw. And an onion is a center of the plate ingredient for most dishes. So the onion category at retail across the country tends to fare better when economic uncertainty comes into the picture. Some of your higher cost produce items like fresh cut or maybe berries or things like that, or the organic salads, they tend not to do as well. But you know, I know during the Great Recession back in 08 and 09, the Vidalia onion and the sweet onion category performed pretty well.
John, thank you so much.
Yep.
Appreciate you doing this with us today. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about Vidalia onions. It's one of my favorites.
It is ours too. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, not to sound redundant, especially given the theme of this show, but need we remind you that if you missed any of today's stories or others on the program, you can still see them in their entirety at our YouTube channel, The Farm Monitor. So many good features and so much information to choose from, and the archive dates all the way back to 2009.
Well, we have saved the best for last. When we come back, the story you clicked on the most, and it's no surprise why. It centers on an issue that's touched a nerve for families and producers everywhere. To wrap up our look back, we turn to a story that has stood above the rest. Nearly 10,000 viewers watched this report on the soaring cost of beef, an issue weighing heavily on both consumers and cattle producers.
In Athens, our John Holcomb sat down with UGA livestock economist Will Secor to break down what's tightening the market and why those elevated prices may be sticking around longer than anyone would like.
Whether you're a cattle producer or a grocery shopper, there's no doubt you've seen the record price of beef at the store, a trend that's been climbing steadily, reaching its highest level in 70 years. In fact, according to Extension livestock economist Will Secor, beef prices have increased 15% since last year.
When we look at some of the data and we can compare what we're seeing in our most recent data compared to last year, for example, beef prices overall are up 15%. That compares to other proteins like pork that's up maybe around 2%. Chicken is up around 3% year over year. So this same time this last year, we're up considerably for beef, but we're not seeing that same level of increase.
According to Secor, there are several different factors driving up prices, but mostly can be attributed to the country's shrinking cattle herd.
We've been approaching the low in this most recent cattle cycle. We had July inventory numbers that were again lower compared to, with the July data, we have to compare back to 2023, but if we go back to our January data, it was lower than 2024. So we have lower cattle inventory. That's creating lower beef, even though we're actually producing more beef per head.
And with those tighter supplies, Secor says the effects can be seen in every aspect of the cattle industry.
We're seeing high prices all along the supply chain. So retail, that high retail price is translating back to high wholesale prices, it's translating back to high fed cattle prices, and it's translating back to higher feeder cattle and calf prices.
According to Secor, those higher prices aren't going anywhere anytime soon, as he says it takes a while for cattle inventory to build back up.
Supply is really slow to turn around. It takes a while for producers to make that retention decision and start to see those supplies actually translate into more beef at the retail level. So from a supply standpoint, we're turning around an ocean liner, not a jet ski. And so that's going to be slow to turn from the supply side.
Secor says that because of those higher prices projected to remain, at least for some time, producers that might be looking to optimize profitability need to make sure that they're managing costs on their operations.
Having a good sense of where your break even is, making sure that you're an efficient producer, using your land, your labor, your capital well in each of those different areas, making sure that you have the infrastructure in place to take advantage of different market opportunities that you might be looking at. Those would all be areas on the production side that also help you maintain a good margin and even potentially increase revenue without even expanding your herd.
Reporting in Athens for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
Well, folks, that is going to do it for our annual Best of YouTube edition. Next week, we're back with all new stories and a new outlook for 2026.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time right here on the Farm Monitor. Have a great week.